0600 hours, Veracruz coastline. A thick saline mist rolls off the Gulf of Mexico, blanketing the dense jungle canopy in a heavy white shroud. The humidity is already suffocating, sticking to the windshields of rusted delivery trucks moving along the coastal highway. Exotic birds call out from the deep green trees. The surf gently laps against the sandy beaches, masking the low mechanical hum of heavy diesel engines idling just out of sight behind the dunes. A seemingly innocent shipping container on a flatbed truck suddenly splits open. Hydraulic pistons hiss loudly, piercing the morning quiet. The metallic sound echoes through the palm trees. Camouflage netting falls away from the tree line, revealing rows of cold steel tubes pointed toward the eastern horizon. The birds stop singing. A terrifying stillness grips the air for a single heartbeat. A deep guttural roar shakes the earth. The first rocket motor ignites, spewing a jet of white-hot flame that incinerates the vegetation behind it. The ground trembles violently. One missile screams into the air, leaving a corkscrew trail of smoke. Then 10, then 50. The launch vehicles shudder as they empty their tubes in rapid succession. The air pressure drops instantly. The sky transforms. 350 cruise missiles climb in unison, their exhaust trails weaving a thick gray tapestry that completely blocks out the rising sun. The noise is deafening, a physical force that shatters windows in nearby fishing villages and knocks dust from the trees. The missiles crest the apex of their launch and level out. They drop low over the water, skimming the whitecaps like a swarm of angry mechanical hornets. The air smells intensely of burning rocket fuel and ozone. The swarm accelerates. Their turbojets whine as they push for maximum speed, creating a massive acoustic wave that ripples across the water. They do not fly in a straight line. They weave and undulate. In a mobile command truck hidden in the jungle, a Mexican officer watches the telemetry streams. Green lights flood his console. He speaks a single sharp command into his headset. The swarm adjusts its formation, spreading out miles wide to overwhelm the enemy radar net. The roar fades to a distant, ominous rumble over the ocean. The coastal road is scorched and silent. Thick black smoke drifts lazily over the abandoned launch casings. The birds remain silent. The death wave races east. 0605 hours. Combat Information Center, HMS Vanguard, destroyer. The darkened room hums with the steady drone of cooling fans and server racks. Blue ambient lighting reflects off the pale, tired faces of radar operators. It is cool and sterile, a sharp contrast to the humid jungle miles away. A petty officer takes a sip of tepid coffee, his eyes scanning the green sweep of the primary air search radar. The rhythm is hypnotic. Sweep, nothing. Sweep, nothing. A single contact blinks into existence on the outer edge of the screen. The operator frowns and leans in. He taps a key to interrogate the signal. Before the computer can process the IFF tag, a second contact appears. Then 10, then 50. The screen does not populate gradually, it floods. The green sweep bar hits a wall of solid light. Vampire, vampire, vampire! The scream shreds the quiet. The radar display fractures into a chaotic mess of red symbology. The tracking computer groans audibly, its cooling fans spinning up to maximum RPM as the processor attempts to assign track numbers to 350 individual targets. The system lags. The screen flickers. Saturation attack bearing 270 high subsonic. The tactical action officer slams his hand onto the general alarm. The klaxon erupts, a harsh rhythmic braying that vibrates through the steel deck plates. The calm atmosphere dissolves into absolute bedlam. Officers scramble over trailing headset cables. They shout over one another, their voices cracking with urgency. The main tactical display freezes. The sheer volume of data crashes the threat prioritization algorithm. A red system error box flashes on the main wall screen. The warfare officer punches the reset key, slamming it with his fist. Nothing happens. He roars at his team to switch to manual optical targeting. On the bridge above, the officer of the deck grabs the ship's wheel. He spins it hard to port. The massive vessel leans violently. Coffee cups slide off consoles and shatter on the floor. Books and charts tumble from shelves. The hull groans under the stress of the emergency turn. "They are everywhere! I can't get a lock!" a fire controlman yells. He claws at his console, sweat dripping onto the glass. The radar scope is just a glowing red smear. The digital distance counter drops rapidly. 40 miles, 30 miles, 20 miles. The swarm closes the distance at terrifying speed. The captain stands in the center of the chaos. He grips the railing until his knuckles turn white. He looks at the frozen screen. He looks at his crew. He realizes the machine has failed them. 0608 hours, Foredeck HMS Vanguard Destroyer. The vessel leans hard into the waves, cutting a deep white furrow in the ocean. Sea spray crashes over the bow, soaking the gray steel plates. Amidst the spray, rows of armored hatches snap open along the vertical launch cells. The mechanical clack of locking pins releasing echoes over the wind. "Weapons free! Clear the rails!" The deck erupts. A blinding flash ignites the morning gloom. A pillar of white fire roars from the number 1 cell, scorching the paint on the surrounding deck. The heavy air defense missile tears free from its canister, riding a column of smoke into the sky. A split second later, the second cell fires, then the third. The launch sequence becomes a continuous, deafening roar. 48 interceptors streak upward in a chaotic, weaving dance. They bank sharply, their rocket motors painting twisting white contrails against the dark clouds. They accelerate to hypersonic speeds, hunting the heat signatures of the incoming Mexican swarm. The noise is physically painful, vibrating the teeth of every sailor inside the hull. High above the water, the two waves collide. The sky fractures. Warheads detonate in rapid succession, creating a grid of expanding orange fireballs. The interceptors smash into the leading edge of the cruise missile swarm. Shockwaves ripple through the humid air, visibly distorting the horizon. Burning debris rains down into the sea like a meteor shower. Large chunks of twisted fuselage splash violently into the water near the ship. On the bridge, the tactical action officer shields his eyes from the glare. "Splash 1, splash 10, multiple kills," he shouts. The defensive wall holds for a moment. The horizon burns. Black smoke from the destroyed missiles creates a thick artificial cloud layer. But through the gaps in the smoke, the second wave appears. They fly lower, faster, diving under the debris field of their fallen comrades. The interceptors are gone. The launch cells sit empty, smoking and charred. The Vanguard rights itself in the water. The silence returns for a fleeting second, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Then, the radar warning receiver changes its tone from a beep to a solid, high-pitched scream. 0612 hours, HMS Vanguard, Destroyer. The air on the deck reeks of spent solid rocket fuel. The vertical launch hatches stand open and empty, wisps of gray smoke curling from the charred tubes. The ship is naked. On the bow, the automated rotary cannon spins up to full speed. It emits a terrifying, continuous buzzsaw roar as it vomits a stream of tungsten rounds at the sea-skimming shapes. The tracers tear into one missile, shredding its wings and sending it cartwheeling into the waves. But the swarm is too dense. The cannon runs dry. The barrels spin down into silence. The lead cruise missile strikes the destroyer amidships, just below the bridge wings. The impact is absolute. The warhead punches through the armored steel skin and detonates deep inside the main corridor. A massive orange fireball expands outward, blowing the heavy watertight doors off their hinges and hurling them into the sea like leaves. The 8,000-ton vessel shudders violently, whipping the mast back and forth. Before the ship can settle, the next wave hits. 3 missiles slam into the waterline, the engine room, and the helicopter hangar simultaneously. The aviation fuel tanks ignite. A catastrophic explosion rips the vessel's spine in half. The sound is not a boom. It is the screaming of tearing metal that drowns out all other noise. The bow section lifts bodily out of the water, twisting unnaturally against the dead weight of the stern. Inside the bridge, the world turns upside down. Glass shatters, spraying the crew with razor-sharp shards. High-pressure steam pipes burst in the passageways below, filling the darkness with scalding white clouds. Sailors are thrown across the deck, slamming into bulkheads and consoles. The main power grid fails instantly. The lights die, replaced only by the flickering red glow of raging fires. The Vanguard ceases to be a fighting ship. It becomes a burning wreck, listing 40 degrees to starboard. The ocean rushes into the gaping wounds in the hull, dragging the broken steel carcass down toward the crushing depths. 0615 hours, HMS Iron Duke frigate. 3 miles south of the burning Vanguard, the smaller frigate turns hard into the wind. The crew on the bridge watches in horror as their sister ship sinks. Black smoke rolls across the water, obscuring the horizon. The captain shouts orders to the weapons team. The ship's engines scream at maximum power, vibrating the deck plates. Engage! All batteries engage! The main 4.5-inch deck gun swings rapidly to the north. It fires, boom, clack, boom. The autoloader cycles frantically, ejecting hot brass casings onto the foredeck. The shells burst in the air miles away, creating black puffs of flak against the gray sky. It is a futile gesture. The swarm is too fast. The Phalanx Close-In Weapon System, CIWS, on the superstructure spins up. The radar-guided Gatling gun emits a terrifying electric buzz. It sprays a solid stream of tungsten rounds at the incoming shapes. One missile detonates in midair, showering the sea with shrapnel. A second missile shears apart, its wing tumbling into the water. But the Mexican swarm adapts. The missiles break formation, splitting high and low. They flank the frigate from both sides. The phalanx tracks one target swinging wildly, but it cannot engage 10 at once. Brace for impact! The first missile slams into the stern, obliterating the helicopter flight deck. The explosion hurls the ship's Lynx helicopter over the side into the churning water. Fuel sprays across the superstructure and ignites instantly. The second missile hits the waterline directly amidships. It punches through the thin steel plating and detonates inside the auxiliary machinery room. The blast force travels upward, buckling the main deck. Steel plates rip open like wet cardboard. The third missile strikes the forward magazine. The frigate vanishes. A blinding white flash erases the ship from view. A massive column of fire and debris shoots 2,000 feet into the air. The shockwave hits the water with the force of a hammer, flattening the waves instantly. When the smoke clears, there is no ship. There is only a slick of burning oil and scattered debris raining down on the empty ocean. 0618 hours, UK beachhead Gold, Veracruz coast. The ground shakes rhythmically. Heavy tactical trucks sit dug into the dunes, surrounded by walls of sand-filled barriers. Camouflage nets flap violently in the onshore wind. The Royal Artillery crew shouts over the roar of portable generators. Out at sea, two massive columns of black smoke rise from the horizon where the ships used to be. The air smells of salt and burning diesel. The radar operator inside the command vehicle screams into his headset. Inbound. Low level. Brace! The launch vehicles on the dunes pivot sharply. Hydraulic jacks whine. The cold launch system pops 4 interceptors into the air. Their motors ignite instantly, streaking white trails across the beach. They fly flat and fast, skimming the surf to meet the incoming cruise missiles. Booms echo like thunderclaps. 3 incoming missiles disintegrate, splashing harmlessly into the waves. But the swarm does not stop. 12 missiles separate from the main pack. They pop up, climbing 500 feet, then dive vertically onto the beachhead. The defensive battery is caught in the open. The first warhead airbursts directly above the main radar truck. Thousands of tungsten fragments rain down at supersonic speed. The spinning radar mast shears off, tumbling into the sand. The command cabin turns into a sieve. The windshield implodes. The metal skin is perforated instantly. The second missile slams directly into an ammunition supply truck. The explosion is earth-shattering. A fireball consumes the dunes. The shockwave flattens the command tent instantly. Soldiers are lifted off their feet and hurled backward into the sand barriers. A burning tire spins through the air and crashes into a trench. The remaining launchers fire blindly, but the guidance link is dead. The beach is a cratered ruin. Thick black smoke mixes with the white sand, choking the survivors. 0622 hours, starboard bridge wing, HMS Dauntless destroyer. The ocean boils with white foam. The captain screams for hard starboard rudder. The 8,000-ton warship leans dangerously, its propeller thrashing the water. On the open bridge wings, lookouts clutch the railings. Their knuckles are white. The horizon is a wall of approaching gray smoke trails. The primary radar is dead. The vertical launch cells are empty. Desperation takes hold. Royal Marines strap themselves to the railings on the aft deck. They raise general-purpose machine guns and assault rifles. They fire blindly into the wall of incoming metal. Brass casings spill across the wet deck, rolling into the scuppers. It is a gesture of defiance against a hurricane. Chaff! 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 Mortars on the deck pop with a dull thud. Canisters hurl into the air. Silver clouds of aluminum foil bloom around the ship, creating a false radar echo to confuse the missile sensors. It works for 1 second. The lead missile wavers, confused by the radar clutter. It dives early, smashing into the water 50 yards off the bow. But the kinetic energy is too high. The missile disintegrates on impact with the waves. A shotgun blast of jagged titanium, engine parts, and burning fuel sprays across the Dauntless. The shrapnel sweeps the bridge wing like a scythe. Glass explodes inward, showering the helm in razor-sharp shards. The lookouts are cut down instantly. The metal skin of the superstructure is peppered with hundreds of holes. Then the second missile ignores the chaff. It locks onto the heat of the exhaust stacks. It slams into the base of the main mast. The explosion is deafening. The massive steel tower buckles, screaming as it twists. It collapses forward, crushing the bridge roof and smashing the radar arrays flat. A third missile punches through the hull at the waterline. The sea rushes in with the force of a train. The destroyer slows to a halt, burning and broken. 0625 hours, Combat Direction Center HMS Sovereign Command Cruiser. The flagship sits alone in the smoke-filled channel. To the north and south, burning oil slicks mark the graves of the escorts. The heavy cruiser vibrates with the hum of maximum power generation. Every electronic warfare emitter on the superstructure glows with invisible energy. The air around the ship crackles with static electricity. Activate siren! All decoys, now! The tactical officer slams the master switch. The deck mortars fire in a rippling wave. Hundreds of canisters burst overhead, creating a massive cloud of silver chaff and burning phosphorus flares. The ship disappears inside a man-made fog bank. Floating radar buoys inflate in the water, mimicking the radar return of a massive hull. The Mexican swarm approaches. The missiles detect the electronic wall. For a moment, the formation fractures. 5 missiles dive into the ocean, chasing the ghost signals of the radar buoys. Water geysers erupt harmlessly. A cheer starts to rise in the operations room. It dies instantly. The bulk of the swarm, over 40 missiles, does not dive. They pull up. The nose cones rotate. Optical sensors scan the smoke. They ignore the radar clutter. They lock onto the massive thermal bloom of the cruiser's gas turbine exhaust vents. The swarm turns as one. They dive from the clouds like birds of prey. The phalanx guns on the Sovereign roar to life, tracing lines of fire into the sky. They shred 2 missiles. 3, but there are too many. The sky is full of dark shapes falling faster than sound. 0628 hours, engine room, HMS Sovereign, cruiser. The space is cavernous, filled with the deafening whine of gas turbines spinning at maximum capacity. Sweat slicks the faces of the engineering team as they monitor pressure gauges. The steel floor plates vibrate violently. Above them, the muffled thud of the deck guns firing feels like a heartbeat. Then, the world ends. The first missile punches through the outer hull plating just above the waterline. It enters the forward turbine enclosure. The warhead detonates. A blast of superheated pressure expands instantly inside the confined space. The steel bulkheads do not bend, they shatter. Shrapnel sprays across the engine room like shotgun pellets. The main fuel lines sever. Jet fuel sprays onto the white-hot turbine casings. A massive fireball erupts, consuming the oxygen in the room in a split second. Engineers are thrown backward, slamming into pipes and ladders. On the main deck, a second missile strikes the bridge superstructure. The impact shears the starboard wing clean off. Concrete and steel rain down on the foredeck. The radar mast collapses, crashing through the roof of the operations room below. Brace! 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 A third missile dives vertically. It punches through the flight deck and explodes deep inside the ship's magazine. The secondary explosion lifts the 10,000-ton cruiser out of the water. The keel snaps with a sound like a gunshot that echoes for miles. A geyser of fire shoots up through the funnel, melting the aluminum plating instantly. The ship drops back into the sea with a bone-jarring crash. Inside the passageways, gravity shifts. The vessel lists 20 degrees to port. Lockers tear loose from the walls, crushing sailors against the bulkheads. Emergency lights flicker and die, plunging the corridors into darkness filled with black, choking smoke. Water rushes into the lower decks, roaring like a waterfall. The Sovereign is no longer fighting, it is drowning. 0645 hours, offshore Veracruz. The roar of the jet turbines fades. A heavy, suffocating silence descends over the water, broken only by the sharp crackle of burning structures and the hiss of escaping steam. The wind shifts, carrying a thick wall of acrid black smoke over the waves. The sea surface is no longer blue. It is black, coated in a massive slick of heavy fuel oil that suppresses the whitecaps. The defensive network is gone. Where 5 distinct radar signatures once stood, only burning wreckage remains. The remains of the command cruiser Sovereign roll slowly to port. The massive vessel has lost its battle with buoyancy. The superstructure hits the water with a chaotic splash, sending a wave of steam rolling across the debris field. The red-painted hull rises into the air, water cascading off the barnacles on the keel. Enormous air pockets burst from the submerged hatches, churning the oil slick into a frothy mess. To the north, the destroyer Dauntless is already gone. Only the tip of its bow remains above the surface, pointing vertically at the sky like a tombstone. It bobs once, exhales a final plume of trapped air, and slides silently beneath the waves. On the beachhead, the fires burn with intense heat. The sand has turned to glass in the crater pits. The skeletons of the radar trucks sit twisted and blackened. Secondary explosions pop intermittently as ammunition cooks off in the intense heat, throwing sparks into the jungle tree line. Deep in the Veracruz jungle, the Mexican launch vehicles lower their empty canisters. Hydraulic stabilizers retract into the mud. The heavy diesel engines rev up. The trucks turn around, crushing the vegetation as they retreat deeper into the canopy. The ambush is complete. 700 hours. Debris field, Gulf of Mexico. The morning sun burns through the haze, casting a harsh light on the black scar stretching across the ocean. The water does not look like water. It is a thick, sludge-like soup of heavy fuel oil, floating debris, and gray ash. The air is toxic, heavy with the stench of unburnt kerosene and charred plastic. Small fires still flicker on patches of floating fuel, sending twisting columns of black smoke into the humid sky. On the listing stern of the cruiser Sovereign, a young sailor clings to the railing. The angle of the deck is 45 degrees and increasing. The steel groans beneath his boots. He looks down. The black water is 50 feet below. He jumps. He hits the water with a bone-jarring slap. The impact forces the air from his lungs. He plunges deep into the cold darkness. He kicks frantically, fighting the drag of his waterlogged uniform. He breaks the surface, gasping for air, but inhales a mouthful of bitter, stinging oil. He coughs violently, spitting black slime. His eyes burn. He wipes them with an oily hand, making it worse. Around him, the sea is alive with struggling figures. Hundreds of heads bob in the slick. Orange life vests provide stark contrast to the black water. Some men scream for help. Others are silent, drifting face down. A jagged piece of aluminum hull plating floats past, carrying 3 sailors who cling to it like a raft. Inbound! Overhead! The rhythmic thumping of rotor blades cuts through the cries of the wounded. A gray rescue helicopter banks sharply over the debris field. The downwash from its massive rotors hits the water, whipping the oil slick into a frenzy of black spray. The pilot fights the controls, hovering precariously 50 feet above the waves. The side door slides open. A winchman leans out, suspended by a steel cable. He drops rapidly toward the water. He swings in the wind, signaling to a group of survivors clinging to a floating cargo net. "Grab the harness, grab it!" the winchman yells over the engine roar. He hits the water and grabs the collar of a sailor who is slipping under. He snaps a carabiner onto the man's vest. He signals the hoist operator. The cable pulls tight. Both men are yanked from the water, dripping oil and seawater as they rise toward the hovering machine. A second helicopter arrives, then a third. They circle like vultures, dropping baskets and swimmers into the mess. On the horizon, a support ship plows through the waves at full steam, its bow wave pushing debris aside. Nets are thrown over the side. Scramble ladders unroll down the hull. The sailor in the water kicks toward the ship. His limbs feel like lead. The oil clogs his ears. He reaches out, his fingers brushing the coarse rope of a scramble net. He grips it, he pulls. His muscles scream in protest. A pair of strong hands grabs his wrist from above. He is hauled upward, scraping his chest against the barnacles on the hull, until he collapses onto the steel deck of the rescue ship. He vomits oil and salt water onto the non-skid paint. He is alive. 7:30 hours, the Gulf of Mexico. The tropical sun climbs higher, baking the black oil slick that covers 10 square miles of the ocean surface. The heat is oppressive, radiating off the dark water and mixing with the lingering gray smoke. The roar of the battle has vanished completely. A heavy, unnatural silence settles over the graveyard, broken only by the hiss of cooling debris and the gentle lap of oily waves against floating wreckage. The last rescue helicopter banks away to the east. Its rotor wash kicks up a final spray of black mist before it disappears toward the horizon. The support ships turn their sterns to the carnage, steaming away at full speed. The area is abandoned. The sea reclaims the dead. Large bubbles of air and hydraulic fluid burp to the surface where the Sovereign went down, disturbing the floating mats of charred insulation and shredded life jackets. A single torn Union Jack flag drifts sluggishly in the current, soaked in heavy fuel oil, before sinking beneath the black scum. High overhead, a new sound pierces the quiet. It is not the roar of missiles. It is the sharp, high-pitched whine of turbofans. 2 silver Delta Wing fighter jets streak across the blue sky. They fly low, their shadows racing across the oil slick. They bank sharply over the scene of the destruction, their afterburners glowing orange. The pilots look down at the empty ocean. There is no resistance, no radar locks, no surface-to-air missiles. The lead jet tips its wing in a victory roll. The pair accelerates, breaking the sound barrier with a sharp double crack that echoes over the silent, burning water. They claim the airspace.